and hit the record button. Yeah, here we go. Great. So throughout the session, please let us know if anything happens with the audio or the video. We've had a smooth run so far, so hopefully it'll continue to work in our favor. So I'll just double check to see if everything is connected. And I'll give people a few minutes to jump on. I know it's different time zones for everyone out there, so there could be a bit of a lag. So in saying that, I always like to open up by saying a quick housekeeping. So as you all might be aware at this stage, we do have a trauma therapist on hand for anyone who feels that they need that extra level of mental health support. So she's offering a complimentary 15-minute debrief session. And essentially, if you do also feel that you need an a bit of extra assistance during this difficult time, we have set up a hotline section under the perks on the website. So if our conversation brings up any uncomfortable thoughts or puts you in a position where you feel like you need more support, we're here for you 100%. The other thing to keep in mind as well is if you jump in and ask any questions throughout, you do go into the running to win a handful of prizes. That includes a bunch of books, mostly along the lines of self-help and career development and culture. But then there's also the prize to win a complimentary 90-minute strategy session with me, which is specifically around toxic workplace culture. So with that said and done, feel free to add your questions as we go. But in the meantime, I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful Troy, who is a business strategist and mental health advocate, and very much a great person to have on board, especially during these difficult times. So give me a second to read this bio. Recognized as an Australian Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist, Young Australian of the Year nominee, global business strategist, and authorized mental health speaker, I'm really proud to introduce you all to Troy.
Hi, everyone.
So, as you're probably familiar, I usually like to open up the conversation with a bit of a discussion about experiences of toxic workplace culture that you may have had, and just a bit of a background as to your career journey and whether you have experienced toxic workplace culture before.
Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of people that I've come in contact with have had an experience in toxic workplace cultures. I used to work for an insurance company just after I left high school. I worked there for a number of years. Then I worked for one of the top tier banks for a period of time as well. Then I was a social worker, specifically a youth worker, and then became an accountant and spent about 10 years in different accounting practices. So there's a lot of, in all of those instances, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of time pressure. There's a lot of money pressure. There's a lot of KPIs and goals and stretch goals. And, you've got managers have got expectations and requirements, and staff have got to come up to those requirements. And how do you push staff or motivate staff? Different managers have different motivational techniques, shall we say. And some of them were less supportive than others. And I always remember being in one accounting firm and knowing that everybody in the office was always tense, and that the manager, the owner, was just a very, very tall, very, very large man, very imposing personality, very loud. And he walked to the door of his office one day and called down through the entire office saying, "Oi," not a polite word, to the receptionist, "Where's my," another polite, non-polite word, "file on that thing that I asked you for, you." So, and like all of us, there was about, I think there was 8 or 9 of us in the office, and we're all sort of in that area at the time. Unfortunately, that wasn't necessarily an uncommon experience. So it wasn't long before I was like, you know what, yeah, this is not for me. But in saying that, I later on went into a role where I was a practice manager in a large accounting firm, and anytime I'd get stressed or frustrated, as we all do at times, I'd remember back to that point and go, I'm not going to do that. That's not how I want to show up in the world.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually one of the things we touched on in the legal discussion I had earlier this morning with Meredith, which was the fact that, it really comes down to conflict management and how you want to handle a situation. And it's sort of like on the onus of the person to make sure that we are at least always maintaining that sense of self and not giving into the bullying behaviors that we are experiencing, even though, we shouldn't have to be dealing with this in the first place. So yeah, I appreciate
just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean we need to be engaging in that and reciprocating in the same way, or passing it forward to other people.
So along with that, I'd love to know, you're a mental health advocate yourself. I'd love to know a bit more about what are some key elements to cultivating a mentally healthy workplace, and what are some ways we can start introducing this to be the new norm rather than, a shiny addition that some companies like to add as part of their official statement.
Yeah. So we have a mental health policy, so we've done our bit. It doesn't quite work that way. I mean, it's a piece of paper is not worth the paper it's written on if you don't actually implement strategies around that and follow through with that. So I said I went through a process through my journey of employment journey before I came out into my own thing, where I was a youth worker. I was a youth worker for the Salvation Army in Tasmania. And I had a lot of struggles and issues and times in my own life with mental health concerns when I was like a teenager and 20s, and for a number of different reasons. So having had those experiences myself, and having been through mental health first aid training and mental health training and support systems, and knowing what's around to be able to access those support systems for the young people and their families that I was working with as a youth worker, I'd had exposure to that. I'd had awareness of that. I'd had knowledge of what to do, what to notice, what were the triggers, and how to get support from that background, and then coming into a management position. So whenever I would see, for me, one of the big triggers was always if there's a big difference between somebody having a bad day or a bad week and somebody actually having like a mental health issue. And it could be anything, could be anxiety, could be depression, could be any number of things. But and different people have different triggers, and that the treatment and support that every person needs is individual, because the causes are individual. Yeah. Right? Every person's triggers will be their own. But what I noticed was, what I always took away was, if somebody's behavior changes significantly over a period of a week or a period of a month or something like that, or just they really aren't themselves, but they're not like fluid, they're just not showing up the way they normally do. Normally, hey, fun and having talk and all the rest of it, and they're part of the team and they're engaging, and all of a sudden they're just sitting at the desk and really just concentrating. And it's not just work, it's just, don't talk to me, leave me alone, I don't want to engage. And it's very short, sharp answers. There's significant changes, or diet, if somebody's normally eats a particular thing or is always having lunch, and then all of a sudden they just stop having lunch breaks and these sorts of things, because a lot of people will lose their appetite. Some people do comfort eating, other people just don't eat. So it's noticing those things, having relationships with people in the teams. Like the practice I was a practice manager of, there were 70 people across different locations. So it's challenging to have a relationship with all of those people all the time, but in the same token, that was actually my job. I was literally getting paid to have a relationship and an engagement with all those people. So I could tell when somebody was different to how they show up. So not everyone's going to be extroverted. Some people are going to be very, very quiet normally anyway. But I would notice, and I was also a training manager. So I would do training, and I was a senior accountant. So I would do referrals, and people would come to me with questions in the accounting space and technical questions. So if I noticed that someone was struggling and they came into my office, because practice managers had my own office, and as I sit down and we'll have a chat about it, and I just say, look, we'll just put the work to the side for a second. just want to have a bit of a chat. I've noticed you've been a little bit off, you've been a little bit quiet, you haven't been engaging, whatever the situation might be. I mean, if you need support, or if anything's going on and you need some help, you don't need to tell me what's going on. But if you want to let me know that something is going on and you need support with that, we have an employee assistance program. You can go to your GP and talk to them about it and maybe get some support. They might be able to refer you through to a mental health care plan. So we have options. And there were a couple of times when people went, actually, yeah, I'm sorry that they had this fear that if they said anything, it was going to reflect poorly on them as an employee. And then their next time something came up in a performance review, they're going to go, oh, God, like I'm not doing as well, or they're going to not give me that pay rise, or that I'm not going to give them that promotion because I'm struggling with anxiety, I'm struggling with this, or, my relationship's falling apart, or my child's sick and I don't know how to deal with it, or whatever that is. I was like, no, it's none of that. Talk to me about it, and we can help. I can help you to access the support that you need to work through that in your way. You don't need to talk to me about the issue. And then they would go and they would see their doctor and they would get the support. And then I had a code with the ones that came to me, and we had this discussion that anytime they needed some space, anytime they needed to just, like, if they felt they weren't being productive and they felt that their thought processes were overcoming them, to come up to my office. Remember, I'm working in an accounting office, right? So they come up to my office, knock on my door, say, hey, Troy, I'm just going across the road to get a cup of coffee. I'll be back in a bit. I'm like, sure, that's fine. So I knew, and they knew, that was code for they need some time out. But they didn't feel like they had to come up secretly and go, I just need some time because I'm not coping right now. And everybody else in the team know, right? So I knew and they knew. And if anybody asked where they were, I'd say, oh, they've just popped across the road to get a coffee. They're on a client call, whatever it was. So they felt supported without feeling challenged, or without feeling confronted, or without feeling like they were at risk of losing their position or having to let everybody else in the team know, but at the same time knew that somebody knew what was going on. So it sort of fit together. And through that, because they felt supported, they were able to get the support they needed, as well as then feeling like, hey, this company that I'm working for actually does validate me and value me and my contribution, and I'm not getting any negative feedback from admitting the fact that I'm not okay at this point in time. Because a mental health concern that anybody has, it's part of, I always say about me, it's always been a part of who I am, but it no longer defines who I am. That's the same in the workplace as well.
Yeah, so essentially you were able to create a space for psychological safety where someone did feel comfortable enough to approach you without knowing that it wouldn't compromise their career, because you created that sort of subtle but nurturing environment where they did feel they could comfortably make room for that conversation, or even just take time out when they needed it most. So,
and if you want to approach it, and it's nice and it's warm and it's fluffy and it's, oh, isn't that lovely? Troy did that for those people. And that's great from that perspective. But as managers, it is our role, if you want to strip it back to the business side of things and the brass tax side of things, it's our role to get the most that we can out of our employees. And it might sound counterintuitive to some people, but by being more supportive, staff are actually more productive. Absolutely. So by giving them the space when they are on site and they are in front of the computer, they are doing the stuff, they're actually more productive. So you actually get more out of them, and they're able to contribute more to the business and to their role by being supported than feeling that pressure. And because the productivity significantly decreases, they're basically just sitting in front of the computer screen, not doing as much. So it does actually work from a business perspective as well.
Yeah, exactly. Presenteeism is such a huge issue, and I think companies are only just beginning to wake up to the actual impacts that it's having on their bottom line. So no matter which aspect you look at it from, it is really an essential thing to be incorporating into how managers engage with multiple levels of the company. So I'm glad you addressed that.
And thankfully we had, it's an accounting firm, so everything is managed in 5-minute increments. right? The timesheets of 5 minutes on every job. So I had the data. I could go to the directors and I could go to these people. I had this, see, this is how productive they were. This is how long they took to do this, where they used to do it in an hour and a half. It's taking them 3 to 4 hours to do that same task. But they got the support, and then it came back to like 2 hours because there's some lag, but at least I actually had the data to actually go and say supporting these people with their mental health is benefiting the business.
Incredible. And that's been a recurring narrative throughout the panels as well, being able to communicate with other upper management with hard facts and data seems to be the best way to start enacting this change. So the fact that you not only did the like soft and sweet thing, but then you also backed up with the hard facts, it's kind of the best of both worlds that we can all implement in our daily work life. So with that said, mental health, like the facts around mental health, especially for men, is absolutely shocking. I know in Australia we have incredibly
1 in 8 or something.
Yeah. And I think we're really only beginning to scratch the surface of how to address this issue. And a lot of that does come down to societal pressures and, you know, the need to be a certain way. I would love to hear your perspective on what do you think the largest barrier is to addressing mental health at work, specifically in relation to, you know, perhaps breaking down these stigmas or expectations based on gender.
So being a male with a background of mental health concerns in workplaces, again, it come when I was going up through the ranks, as they say, you know, climbing that ladder. Again, it was that stigma of, if I admit that I have a mental health problem, they're not going to put me in a position of management. They're not going to put me in a position of seniority, because there genuinely was this thing of, what if this person has a breakdown? Now, there wasn't about me, but I was privy to a conversation around a potential promotion for another person because of a role that I was in. And they literally said, oh, look, you know, this person has had some time off. You know, he's had this issue and he's had that issue. And, you know, what if it happens again? Then we're going to have to find somebody else to do the job. So we might as well just find somebody else that we don't have to worry about that with. Even now, I'm like, it just takes my breath away, just the thought of the fact that, what? You know, the best person for the job, but because I've had a mental health concern, that's actually part of the conversation. And so people will be reserved about admitting that. Now, there's older, and I'm going to get into some generalizations, and it's not just because it's opinion and anecdotal, but like I said, I've done mental health training. I have a number of clients who are actually psychologists and have done over a number of years. And I actually work with a number of not-for-profit organizations that work specifically in the mental health space. And it's known, and through research, that women will more likely talk with their friends or talk to other people or seek support for mental health concerns that they're having. Men less likely to, because of pride and because of image and because of their feeling of needing to be the provider for their house, so they can't risk their jobs. So there's a lot of that pressure that they put onto themselves. But there are more support services around now. So there's livin.org, which is specifically for men's mental health. Okay. I've done a lot of work with Beyond Blue. I was a speaker. I was part of their Entrepreneurs Heads Up program. I've been with them on a number of activities and programs that they've been involved in. And I'm always pushing, or not pushing, but making people aware of the fact that there is support available. Mm-hmm. Guys are less, that's in the practice management role. I had to be a lot more mindful of how I broach the subject of mental health with the male members of staff necessarily than I did with the female members of staff. But then I also was like, there was an admin manager that was sort of at the same level as I was. So we would sort of talk together about some of these things and be like, if it's an admin team person, you know, and just working that out and coming through who they have a relationship with. But sharing that there's information available, sharing that there is support available, just providing a comfortable workspace will encourage any member of staff, male or female, to be more comfortable if you're approaching them to have that conversation with them without them feeling confronted. Because if guys feel confronted and they feel like they're backed into a corner, that's not going to go well. That's not going to be a great outcome. Fight or flight is still inherently there. So it's providing that, and not attacking their pride or not attacking their sense of ego or sense of self. It's why the suicide rates in men are so high, because they don't feel that they can reach out and talk to people about it. They don't feel that, you know, there's that big boys don't cry, or the suck it up, or the have a cup of concrete and harden up. Like, within the last few years, I have heard these things said to people. I'm going, no, that's not how we work with these things anymore. So just, women have, this is not, like I said, it's not a sexist thing. Women have a culture, the way that they engage with people is talking about stuff. The way men engage with people is they don't talk about that stuff at all. You know, you just don't go down to the pub and talk about to your mates about how you're not feeling well. That's just a
and
different...
This actually also came up. Yeah, this also came up in a similar panel that I went to with Beyond Blue, and they said exactly that. I think they had, some key speakers talk, and they said it is different because of how we engage. And so you basically brought up the exact same thing.
This is where this information, this is what I was saying, like, it comes from research. It's not just anecdotal. It comes from research that has been done.
So in relation to that, I've also recently read that apparently, the whole "Are you okay" day thing, for those of you who are watching who are based in America, I don't know if it's global, I think it's just Australian, but essentially you can ask someone during October if they are okay, and it's meant to encourage that conversation around mental health. But apparently we're meant to be not asking if someone's okay because it's too easy to dismiss, and it's not...
I'm fine.
Yeah, exactly. It may not be the best way to actually approach the conversation. So how would you go about starting this? Like, what words or terminology would you use to suggest kind of reaching out for the first time? And I know it depends on who it is and everything else, but
yeah, I think the Are You Okay Day is a fantastic concept, and I think it's to be used as a reminder to reach out and have those conversations with people. Asking somebody, "Are you okay?" though, is not a conversation. It's a question.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it's more about reaching out to people, maintaining conversations. So I'm in Bulgaria, in Europe at the moment, not in Australia, because of the lockdown, and we had like severe lockdown. Like it was just overnight, you're not going anywhere, you're stuck. And now we can't go anywhere because there's no planes flying anywhere. We can't leave the country, right? So a complete lockdown. And one of my mental health concerns has always been, one of my triggers has always been isolation. So you can imagine that I could be triggered right now, right, because of isolation. But because I've got clients and friends and people and communicating with people in Australia all the time, I'm making sure every single day I'm having one voice call or one video call or something so I'm keeping that connection with people. And that's really important for me because I know my triggers and what will support me to not have an exacerbated issue for mental health. The reason I say that is because it's about maintaining relationships, it's about maintaining conversations. Right? So it's not just somebody, and I have had people who know I have this background who have sent me messages and go, "Are you okay? Are you doing all right? Is everything okay? Do you need anything?" Which is fantastic and it's great. And that comes because I've built those relationships, right? So then I turn around and say, well, having a conversation in general, and then once you start talking to somebody for a few minutes and then turn around and say, look, I've noticed you've been a bit off lately. Like, is everything all right? Like bringing it up as part of a conversation rather than just standing in front of somebody and going, "Are you okay? Do you need to talk to somebody?" Because that's very confrontational. And somebody who's having a mental health concern or an issue at that particular point in time, they'd be feeling anxious, even that if it's not anxiety that is their particular concern, they're likely to feel anxious about it in general and be trying to work out what to do and trying to not let other people see that everything's not okay So then for somebody to come up abruptly and go, "Are you okay?" It's like, let's go, oh, hang on a minute. I wasn't doing as well as I thought at hiding this thing that I didn't want other people to know about. Exactly. And then they feel confronted, and that's not going to be helpful. Whereas if it's just having a general conversation, at the moment, catching up for a cup of coffee at a cafe, not really the best idea. Have a virtual coffee. Say, look, mate, I haven't had a chance to catch up with you for a while. I've got some time. Do you want to just have a virtual coffee? Or whether it's a workmate, or if you're a manager and an employee situation and they're doing some work for you, it might be like if you program 10, 15 minutes before or after the call for extend the call, talk about the work stuff, and then say, hey, just noticed, just checking in with my employees, just checking in with the team, all of you guys, and I use guys as a male and female term in a workplace environment, just checking in with all you guys, just seeing how you were going at the moment. And, so you've already got a relationship, you've already had a conversation, you're already engaged, and then it's not a confrontational, look, I've noticed that you're not okay. What's happening? It's everyone's going through stuff at the moment. Mm-hmm. How are you going? How are you feeling? How are you faring? Is there anything we can do to help you? So having that coming from a conversational, non-confrontational background. That's a really long answer to a really short question, but just background.
Covered the COVID-19 stuff as well, so that was my next question. So it was good for you. Okay. Well, I was actually, I recently learned that, I think it was ABC National, Radio National, they discussed that at the moment everyone's experiencing a sort of, because as you're probably aware, the mental health support has like tripled or something in the past. I don't know the exact number, but it's ever since
huge. It is, yep.
So, and one of the reasons for that got brought up in this discussion was because of the lack of freedom. Like we are essentially grieving over a loss of freedom, and I think that has a huge impact on our mental health and how we view the world and everything else. So the fact that you suggested, organizing these virtual coffee chats and just reaching out and embedding that conversation as part of like a normal catch up really helps hopefully make people feel a bit more comfortable to discuss this, because I think we're all kind of taking it a day at a time at this stage.
Yeah, but so I said again, like I now in my business consultancy that I do, I work with a lot of not-for-profit organizations, and when you contribute to a not-for-profit, you do so generally because it's something you feel passionate about. It's a realm that you have a history with or something, and mental health is one of those. So I work with a number of mental health support not-for-profit organizations. So when that announcement was released of the extra lots and lots of millions of dollars of support for people to be able to access virtual, so for practitioners in mental health and medicine to be able to bring in the technology that they need to be able to hold virtual conversations and consultations with people who are experiencing issues with mental health at this point in time and moving forward as well, because this thing will continue. People will go, oh wait, I can actually do this, I can have these conversations, and we can do this, right? So that a lot of that money came out, and I saw that straight away as soon as the money was released. And because I also work with preparing organizations to apply for funding and apply for grants and apply for tenders and things, it came up on my, like 2 days later, it came up on one of my alerts saying, okay, this funding is now available. So it wasn't one of those, we're going to put money into this project in the 5-year forward estimates. It was like 2 days and the money was there like that, because it's that important, because it's so imperative that, we've lost some of our freedom. So we were on military lockdown in this town that I'm in Bulgaria. So it wasn't any of this sort of, there's still a lot of people at the beach. Police cars were driving up and down the streets, making sure people didn't leave their houses. Right? That's just, and it was overnight. We had no chance to get used to anything. So there was this loss of freedom of movement that we hold so dear to our sense of self. Because in Australia, we've got so much room, right? We can move. We can go, we've got the same amount of people in a country as the state of Texas in America. Right. So we've got plenty of room for movement. We did lose those freedoms, and it has caused a lot of mental health issues, that in itself, as well as the people who have lost their job or their business
Mhm.
and the freedom at the same time. So a lot of people's coping mechanism was, if something bad happens and they have a mental health issue, some people will throw themselves into their work because
Mhm.
that's their coping mechanism that works for them. Well, whether it does or not, that's their response. If they don't have the work and they don't have the freedom and they have like a lot of issues. So that's why there's been so much in the news and so much support thrown into mental health support programs. And yes, Beyond Blue's received a lot of extra money. Any
Mhm.
mental health practitioner can access some of those additional funding opportunities to be able to do this stuff virtually. And
Right.
it's really, really important that people access that if they need to, or as employers and as managers, putting in systems and processes for people to be able to work from home at the moment,
Mhm.
but then also being able to be supportive through employee assistance programs, or just because it's a really good idea to support your staff, having some kind of, like, if you're struggling or if you need any support, go to the Beyond Blue or Lifeline or Livin or Black Dog Institute resources, or talk to your doctor. Ring the clinic, your doctor clinic, and say, look, I'm struggling with some mental health stuff. Am I able to do a virtual consultation with somebody about that? And just be continually providing those options, and not just once and go, well, we've done that. That ticks off our
Yeah.
done. That's our policy. That's it. We've given them some support, and that every week on a weekly check-in, or every couple of weeks on a, just, or, and not just an email, but an actual conversation. Even if it's a team view conversation, actually saying it impacts a lot more. The feeling of support is a lot more, it's a lot more tangible
Mhm.
if they can hear you saying it, rather than just putting it in an email and then follow it up with an email with, here's some links to some stuff, some support, but not just, oh, look, if you're not feeling well, go and talk to your doctor in an email, because it doesn't really resonate quite the same way.
I think so true too. And also in regards to, I mean, I like that you brought up the fact that technology is now being used to enable this conversation even further, because you still have that element of privacy to some extent. And it essentially means that, where there may have been scarcity, or it was hard to book an appointment, or there were certain limitations, now it has become a lot more accessible. So I guess that's one of the upsides to the strange kind of
Yeah.
new world that we're living in, but it is definitely adjustment all around. And I think I was reading
Yeah.
as well, for the city of Melbourne in particular, I think it's 1 in 10. There's 1 in 10 mental health practitioners per 10 people. So it's, when you look at it like that, and now having this crisis, that's nowhere near enough to be like dealing
Mm-hmm.
with the kinds of issues that we're currently
Yeah.
experiencing. So any kinds of extra resources, like the free ones or the EAPs or anything else that we can be implementing, I think it's all hands on deck at this stage.
Yeah. Yeah. But on the plus side, and I do like to look on the plus side. I do like to try and find positives in situations. If this situation had happened 20 years ago, when Beyond Blue didn't even exist, Zoom wasn't a thing, Facebook hadn't become a thing yet, it was still MySpace and all these sorts of things, that we have so much support available for us now, and the research and the engagement and the way that we engage with staff and management and the way that we look at mental health with less of a stigma
Mhm.
than it used to have, is a very positive thing. And the fact that there are now one to every 10 people, as opposed to one to every how many thousands of people there was back before Beyond Blue really pushed through. And like Lifeline's been there for a while, and they all
Mhm.
provide great support. But yeah, to know that it has been a focus so much for the last 20 years to get to the point where we are now, means that people can access that support when and how they need it.
Mm. Yeah, I like that you left it on a positive note as well. That's so important. I'm just going to check the time to see how we're going. Okay, we've still got a bit of time. So the other element that I wanted to touch on was, um, yeah, I'd love to know a bit more about, I've actually already talked about this, but maybe in a bit more detail in relation to for those who are in management positions and dealing with generational gaps, and maybe there's some of that kind of older language about mental health seeping through and influencing these conversations, how would you encourage someone else in the team or within management to start making these kinds of positive mental health changes within the organization?
So two things came up to me as you were asking the question. The
Mm-hmm.
first was Gandhi, be the change that you want to see in the world. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if nobody else is doing it, be the one to step up and do something.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. And also I remember going to, in the accounting industry, there's a national conference every year of like that each of the main software providers will run once a year. I remember sitting at one of them a couple of years ago and just thinking there is an element of preaching to the converted at this conference, because the people that aren't doing this, that need to hear this, aren't here because they don't want to see it. They wanted to like just put the blinkers on and go, nope, if I don't look at it, it's not there, it's not happening, I don't like change, or that's not how it was done in my day, or we've always done it this way and it's always worked before. And you know, there is an element of that, and that's, or that, you know, I had to do it this way, so I'm going to make you do it the way that my manager made me do it when I was coming through the ranks, because if I had to go through it, so do you. But unfortunately that doesn't fly anymore, nor should it. But I think I've noticed people in prior generations have just gone, that's just the way that it is. The employer system was a be thankful to have a job, look forward to your gold watch at the 25-year anniversary, and then you those sorts of things. It just doesn't work anymore. And I think being in the accounting industry, employment is so fluid. People don't leave, and this has been said before, people don't leave a job, they leave their management.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People don't, I may not be the best example of this, but like people don't leave accounting to go to become a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Somebody doesn't stop being a builder to go and become a lawyer. Very often, it probably has happened, but in general, right? People go, I'm building my way up the ladder. I want to get promotions. I want to do better. I want to specialize in a particular area of what I do, of what I'm good at. Not, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do accounting. I'm going to go and become a hairdresser.
Mm-hmm.
They leave the management. They don't feel supported. They don't feel encouraged. They don't feel like they have growth opportunities. They don't feel like they have pay rise or managerial opportunities. And that comes through from a generational thing as well, to a degree. So yeah, people, if you've got poor management and you've got high turnover, it's probably an indicator of poor management, not just, oh, they just weren't up to the job.
Yeah.
The number of times I've heard that. Well, if they were up to it, they wouldn't have had an issue with it. We'll just have to find somebody who can do the job. So, okay, let's take a breath, step back from this.
Let's reevaluate.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors as well, and done a lot of training and do a lot of resources and get access to a lot of resources through there. And all of the research through there has come through that diversity is the key to growth and sustainability and improvement. So there's definitely value. Sometimes it comes a bit of a negative, like, oh, the old people and the old ways of doing things, and they need to get on board with the way the young people do things these days.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always correct.
Yeah.
It's diversity, right? It's having that balance, including the experience of the people who have been in the industry for an extended period of time, and also having those people bringing in the suggestions and the perspectives of a younger generation who might have access to different technologies. And some people do this really, really well. But it's the same conversation as having, women in the workplace and equal pay for women and women on boards, and the 30% goal for 30% of companies, or 30% of board positions for businesses in Australia to be filled by women.
Mhm.
It took 4 years or almost 5 years from the Australian Institute of Company Directors to go, this is our goal, for it to actually happen.
Mhm.
5 years
And
to get
consider
30% of the people on boards to be female, right? And you go, for me, great to have goals, but I'm like, it should just be a thing anyway. But it's the same with age, and the same with culture, and same with background, and same with sex. Like female, male, female. Having that diversity will can improve the outcomes of the business, and it removes that stigma, and it removes that stuck in the mud, this is the way we've always done things. And if people in management positions or executives or C-suite level aren't comfortable with that yet, they can bring in like subcommittees or something. If they're not quite ready to have somebody on the board, they might put together a subcommittee for something and see how people interact and the skills of those diverse range of people that are already within the company can bring to the table. Or with their hiring policy, start bringing in, if you walk into an office and everybody looks really, really similar to you, it's probably not a really diverse workplace. So maybe trying to, because I was HR manager at the same time as doing this practice management stuff. So that was also an element for me, is the best person for the job, yes, but from a diverse background as well, and getting those different ideas together. And that inherently will break down that culture glut that some businesses get stuck in.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that ageism works both ways as well. Like you said, it's not necessarily like we should be disregarding a more mature generation because they have a wealth of knowledge and there's so much potential there. But then at the same time, the next generation also has value. So it's just a matter of, as you said, making a space that is inclusive of a range of diversities, and that way we can have more of a fleshed out conversation about
I think when I was doing the youth work stuff, I think there was I think his name was, for some reason it comes up as Steve McQueen, and it may or may not be, it may just be a coincidence, had done research on this intergenerational stuff, and that was 15 years ago. But it just really rang true even back then. It's like, yes, there are differences, but use those differences to your advantage rather than as an excuse for why to validate a particular point of view.
And like any change, it is uncomfortable. It may start off not as seamless and streamlined, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work. So I think companies and people just need to give it a bit of a chance and have that open perspective to be able to let it flourish before, trialing it for 2 weeks or a few months or whatever and go like, oh no, we're just going to go back to how it was, which I think is also a trap that,
and encourage, look to provide an environment where you can encourage and embrace the enthusiasm of the younger people in the team, because we're so used to being able to do 3-4 things at the same time, and some people may not be familiar with that or may not be able to do that, and it doesn't mean that they're skittish, and it doesn't mean they can't concentrate. It might just mean that they actually are able to do that because they've been doing that since day dot. So providing an opportunity to encourage that enthusiasm for them to be able to get involved, whether it's a subcommittee or whether it's a culture committee or whether it's whatever it might be. Give them a task, give them a role, give them an opportunity to express that and be engaged in the business. Implement like mentoring in some capacity, like buddy people up with different diversity mentorship. So if somebody's very, very experienced and this person's not as experienced but very enthusiastic, then put the two of them together and they can work together, and that in itself will also help break down barriers and perceptions. And bring it back to the mental health thing, people will feel supported and encouraged rather than separated. And you want to remove that us and them thing and be more of a collaboration. One of my organizations is like, it's that collaboration's trust, because at the same time, at the fundamental, everything that I do, it comes down, trust is a result of collaboration. So everything I do is working with other people and bringing people together to achieve those outcomes. And so it's just a matter of thinking outside the box. And the worst sentence in the world in business in your own business or in a management role is that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's time.
why do we do things this way? I don't know. That's just the way we've always done it, or that's the way things are done here. Oh, yep.
No, that's good to know. So I'm just aware of the time. We've still got a few minutes. I'd love to know how you think success is sort of evolving as, you know, the technology changes and, you know, there is an increasing fear and instability, and those who are stuck in a toxic workplace environment due to economic strains, they may be rethinking their idea of success or rethinking their purpose, or trying to work out how to navigate these sort of uncertain waters. So I guess I guess it comes down to sort of like, how would you define these values, or essentially enable someone to start thinking in a more positive light towards how this time of instability might potentially be an opportunity for a time to reassess kind of other ideas that may not be relevant anymore.
I think when I struggled with this concept of, you know, what do you classify as success for quite some time, because, you know, no matter where you are, you know, there's always somebody who, you know, you have a manager that's above you, or somebody that's making more money than you are, or somebody that's got the life that you want, or the better car, or the better house, or the whatever. And how do you define success? And I think, just like anybody with a mental health concern, how you define success is individual. It's, you know, every single person's definition of success is dependent upon their upbringing or their goals or where they are, what their perspective and viewpoint on the world is. The reason I struggled for a long time to figure out what success was is because I went from having a lot of money, and then I was, you know, homeless for a while, and I've been married and divorced, and, you know, had great jobs and not so great jobs, and had all these experiences. And then I realized that for me, feeling successful was aligned with feeling fulfilled with my image of myself. When I was doing jobs that I didn't want to do because it was a job and it was just money, I wasn't successful. I didn't feel successful, even though I had money, because I wasn't feeling fulfilled within myself. Now, I've traveled the world for the last 12 months running my businesses in Australia, as well as working on not-for-profits. And, you know, I've got to trek tigers in the Bay of Bengal, and I've got to cuddle elephants in Kenya, and, you know, I've played with cats in, you know, the islands off Greece, and I've done all these amazing things. But to me, it's successful, not because I'm, you know, rich and have this fantastic business, but because I'm fulfilled, because I'm applying my skills in a way that I didn't think was possible, that I created for myself and made it possible. And it fits within my inherent need to give back and to support and to help businesses and organizations grow and help other people. And that, for me, so I define that I'm successful now for me, not necessarily financially. Like, I'm not going to go and buy a multi-million-dollar mansion and have a Merc in the driveway anytime soon, but I don't want that, because I would rather put my money into the things that make me feel, let's break it down, the warm and fuzzies inside. So with a lot of, but I have opportunities to do that as well. So I have an accounting background. I have an academic financial mind and a process-oriented mind where I have the ability to make certain things happen. And I apply those skills in a certain way. But it took me ages to figure out what those skills were, learn them, go through the trenches, spend 10 years in accounting firms learning and developing those skills, to then turn around and go, right, now I am ready to step out. So it wasn't just an overnight, oh, I've lost my job, I'm going to go do this thing. It was an intentional, long-term plan. And success now, for people who are in a position where they don't have a job, or the job that they did have isn't there because of the current circumstances, yes, go through the grief process, go through that, wow, everything is different now than it was, and things will likely be slightly different to some degree, we don't know, moving forward. But let's take this opportunity after we've had a time to deal with the mental process of getting used to the fact that life isn't what it was, taking this opportunity, because we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. What would you do if you could wave a magic wand and have your ideal outcome? What would that be? What would your life look like? What are those things where you said, I'd always love to do that, but I never have the time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you don't have like an hour's worth of commute to and from work every day or in either direction, what are you going to do with that extra hour or two that you have every day? Can you put that into developing that thing that you always wanted to be able to do and haven't ever been able to do?
Mm-hmm.
Can you take this time to do that? And is that going to make you feel more fulfilled? The consultant or the gig economy, can you do this thing that you were doing for somebody else, for yourself in some capacity, but in a way, not just because I need a job, I need money, but because it really makes sense to you. It really speaks to your heart. It really lights you up when you think about doing this thing. And if people need support to do that, if they need help to do that, the other people, like the business advisors and the business coaches and the financial people and the systems people, whatever, are still out there working too. So you can still access that support at the moment that you may not have had the time to access before, to work on or work towards being fulfilled and working out what that means is in line with being successful for you as an individual.
That's such a nice note to wrap things up on, just because I think that, everyone is sort of almost with this sense of restlessness and unknown, and we don't quite know how to spend our time or what we should be doing or what may be right or wrong. And it's just that element of, as you said, doing the work behind the mental health. And then once you've established that initial step, you can start looking towards what are those things that you've always wanted to pursue, and try and dive into them. So if anyone
and
has any
being productive will help with feeling like you're contributing, like you're doing something, you're working towards something as well. And if people don't have a doctor specifically, or they don't feel comfortable going and talking to somebody, the Lifeline and Beyond Blue and Black Dog Institute and Living, like, they have online chatbots as well. So you can follow them on Facebook or go onto the website, and they'll have just chat bots that will come up, or people actually sitting on the chats on the other side. So, or there's text messages. You can do things by text for unidentified text and stuff. So if you don't feel comfortable with actually talking to somebody specifically to start off with, you can start sort of that way, and then you go, hey, do you want to talk about this? And then pick up the phone and talk to someone. Or just accessing the resources. It's really important to know those resources are out there, and they're out there to be accessed, and there's no negative connotation from accessing. It's a positive thing to access those resources. That's why they're there.
For sure. So if we do have any extra questions from the audience members, now would be your chance to drop them into the Q&A section, or into the chat box so you can get to them slowly. And in the meantime, I did want to ask more in relation to your business and what you're currently doing, and I know everyone's plans have kind of been, the word pivoting gets thrown a lot at the moment in the entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd love to know what you're up to.
Yeah. So when I stepped out of the accounting, so public practice accounting firms, tax returns and VAS returns and compliance and financial statements and all those things, that administrative stuff of running a business, and stepped from that into the advisory work. And I spent a lot of time, I spent the last 3.5 years working in the startup space. So people who have lost their jobs, or they've had a small business and they're pivoting, they're classifying themselves as a startup, or the entrepreneurs. You've got olderpreneurs and mumpreneurs and onlinepreneurs and whatever other incantation of the word people wanted to use. So I've been working with a lot of those people on business development and growth strategies. And like I said, I'm a growth strategist, so I develop and implement growth strategies for business, whether it's from the startup all the way through to some organizations, multi-million-dollar taken from like 4 to 10 million million or 1 to 4 million or now as a result of all of this than I have been before, because people are going, maybe I do have this time to work on this project that I haven't had time to work on before, or I don't have this money coming in from here, but I can focus on the thing that I want to be doing rather than something that I have to be doing. So like I said before, like I'm traveling the world, and I'm in Europe at the moment. I'm still working with a project that looks after elephants in Nepal, that looks after animals in Kenya as well. I don't know, I just kind of am drawn to the animals side of things, as well as the mental health and the homelessness side of things. I'm helping organizations to develop growth strategies. There's so much funding available still. So with all the shutdown of everything that's happened and all this stimulus that's being utilized to keep people, keep money turning over so people can still afford to eat and keep their houses and things. And business has been put into hibernation, but the government hasn't pulled some of them, but most of the grants and most of the tenders and most of the opportunities that are available to help businesses grow and to help develop a product or help to develop a new process is still available. So there's over $22 billion worth of funding that's available for projects for Queensland alone. It's still open and available right now, even amongst the crisis. So my message to my clients that I've been working with who have these plans and haven't been able to get around to them yet, or to other people that I'm talking to, is what are those plans? Take the opportunity while you have them to develop the business plan, the growth strategy, the pictures, the budgets, the cash flows, all of those things that, yes, there's a lot of paperwork and takes a lot of time. So applying for that funding in a less pressurized situation in some ways, and get familiar with what's actually required and prepare. Because I'm always about, if you prepare and you've got all the documentation ready, then every time a source of funding or every time something comes up, you're already ready to go for that. Or if an opportunity comes up to talk to an investor, or going to a bank and asking for them for money to help with this growth strategy, nobody's going to talk to you unless you've got all that documentation prepared. So I'm spending a lot of time with people at the moment going through that process and getting them ready. So not applying for grants, but getting all the documentation ready that they would need if they were in a position to be able to apply for funding or investment or grants.
Notes and things on it. It seems like a efficient way to be spending our time.
Yeah, and looking at the future instead of the right now.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah, it's good keeping that.
So we've got a couple minutes left. I'd love to know what you have planned for the upcoming future. I mean, other than travel, which hopefully will occur later on this year.
Sometime. We've got to be let out of here first. I'm doing, I think my travel plans will, as they have for the last 12 months, align with the projects that I'm going to be working on as well. So, whether it's going back to Nepal, like I was in Nepal in October and hiked through the Himalayas for my birthday in October, and, then going to Greece and working with the cat sanctuary there. My plans are basically looking for opportunities where I can support an organization and then go to these fantastic places around the world, and not just holiday and not volunteerism, but actually working with amazing organizations in these different places. And eventually my mother might convince me to come back to Australia, even if it's just for a little bit. Not sure when, but
with that said, where can anyone who might be interested in your services find you?
So like all this, LinkedIn. So I'm the only Troy Schonfish on LinkedIn. That's the benefit of having a weird surname. Or the crescendostrategy.com.au website, or just Google my name and it'll come up. Happy to have a chat with anyone. about, you know, the mental health support systems that are available, the practice management stuff, and implementing strategies in the business around being a supportive environment, or any of the development work as well.
That's so nice. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us from all the way outside of the world. I think that yeah, we learned a lot about how to approach